The topic of militarized police departments has become a major point of discussion here in the Americas in recent weeks. It comes after a white police officer shot and killed an unarmed black teenager in the U.S. community of Ferguson, Missouri. Days of protests over racial injustice followed, which involved civilians and heavily armed police officers. Many critics are now speaking out against the weaponry and gear used by law enforcement, much of which was supplied by the military. And similar discussions are taking place in Latin America as well, in countries like Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. Joining us now from Mexico City to tell us more about this is our political analyst, Laura Carlsen. Laura, welcome to the show. What has been the reaction in Mexico to the recent events in Ferguson, Missouri?
Well, Lane, here in Mexico, there's been massive news coverage of the events in Ferguson, and people have reacted with shock and indignation, much as in the United States. There have been opinion pieces and videos played throughout the week in the past couple of weeks since the incidents in Ferguson. You have to remember that here in Mexico, the majority of Mexicans also have family members living in the United States. And many of them don't see this as an isolated instance. So they're concerned about the level of racism that this indicates within the United States society. They're also concerned about inequality because they see these incidents in Ferguson as an indication that inequality and the racism is causing extreme schisms in society that's affecting people and that could easily be affecting their family members and other people there.
And Laura, tell us about Mexico's own experience with militarized police forces. Has it improved public safety at all?
This has been going on for a long time here in Mexico, and it's caused a major debate. In Mexico, the situation is not exactly the same as in the United States. As you know, in the United States, there's a law of posse comitatus that says that the armed forces cannot participate directly in public safety tasks that are the tasks that the police carry out. And so what we've had in the United States is that the police become increasingly militarized. What happens here in Mexico, and what has happened particularly since the war on drugs was launched at the end of 2006 under the administration of former President Felipe Calderón, is that the armed forces have gone directly into domestic crime-fighting tasks in communities and cities all across the country. There's some 50,000 armed forces that are involved in these types of tasks. So although the form is different, we have the same sorts of results in the sense that these are soldiers who are trained to take on an external enemy, and the enemy in this case is Mexican citizens. They're citizens themselves.
And those forces are very visible in Mexico. Can you describe some of the vehicles and gear and weapons that these forces use?
We see this in the streets every day, and in Mexico City it's less than in many other cities throughout the country. The armed forces and the police are using high-power rifles, they're using assault weapons, they're using machine guns, and they have much of the equipment that people have now seen all over the world in the videos that are coming out of Ferguson. And that's because they're getting equipment from many of the same sources. The United States government has been a proponent of using the armed forces in the Mexican war on drugs, as it's backed up the war on drugs through the Merida Initiative. And through that, arms sales from the United States, including military equipment, has gone both to the armed forces and some to the police as well. Now, you have to remember that when we talk about the armed forces and the police, in Mexico, the lines are even more blurred than they are in the United States, as we've seen with the militarized police. In many cases, Army officers will just change uniform from green to blue and go out on the streets with the same military mindset and the same kind of military training, which leads to so many of these human rights abuses and which creates a fertile field for the types of violent confrontations with citizens that we're seeing here now.
And Laura, quickly, do you think Mexico's police departments will always remain militarized?
I wouldn't talk about always, because you can never tell in the long term. There's a lot of changes that take place. Like right now, the president has announced the formation of a gendarmerie, and this is a word that actually means militarized police. They're starting with 5,000, and it's an effort to supposedly create an elite police force, but again, the military training is intensive and that military mindset is there. So what we're seeing essentially is the creation of a warrior cop. And from all signs, despite the fact that this strategy has not worked, that it's actually increased violence since the war on drugs began, by all indications, we're going to be seeing the warrior cop here for a long time to come.
All right, Laura Carlsen in Mexico City, thank you as always for joining us here on America's Now.
Coming up.
An interactive entrepreneur giving away technology.
The price of not having a top-tier education system in Mexico basically means that people will be less educated to face the future, that will be less educated to live their dreams to their full potential, to get the jobs that they want.
America's Now.